Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm excited to spend the next hour with you. And today our topic is all about sugar and providing you with the information that you need in order to make healthier choices. So again, my name is Amy. If you have questions along the way, please go ahead and type in the chat box, and we'll be happy to make sure that I answer your questions. And if it's something that is related to the presentation, I'll answer it right then. And if it's something that's better to answer towards the end of the presentation, we'll have time for Q&A as well. So please share your questions as we go along. All right. So today we're going to go over some statistics about sugar. We're going to talk about what causes cravings. So I really want you to understand how your body relates to sugar, how your mind relates to sugar. Then we're going to talk about some common foods that contain sugar and some foods that you may not even think have sugar in them. We're going to help you to have sugar alternatives, so give you some upgrades, I like to call them, finding healthier options, and then tips to avoid sugar temptations when you're at work or when you're in social environments, some things that you can say to help get through those sticky and challenging situations. So before we get started, please take a moment to read or skim through the disclaimer. Anything in this presentation is to share information about nutrition and health, but if you have any health issues, please consult with your doctor. All right. So here we go. Alrighty, so let's start with some sugar statistics. Where are we today in the United States with sugar? Well, we're definitely eating far more sugar than we ever have before, and each year it keeps on increasing. So the average American consumes about 130 to 160 pounds of sugar per year. You might think that's impossible. I don't add that much sugar to my coffee. I don't, add sugar to my meals. Or maybe you do, but just not that much. Well, we're looking at the total amount of sugar that's in all of your food, not just what you add to your food. So we're going to see how sugar is sneaking in and how it's even possible that we're getting this much sugar in our diets every day. 86 million people are living with pre-diabetes. This is something that's not often screened for unless you go in for an annual checkup, in which most cases a lot of people don't even do blood work in their annual checkup. So a lot of people are walking around, they don't know that they're trending towards diabetes because they don't have any symptoms yet. And if you have never had your blood sugar tested, I highly recommend it. Your insurance does cover it. And what you'd want to be testing is your glucose and your hemoglobin A1C. So you can see that there's a lot of people who are trending towards diabetes, and there are ways that we can prevent this from happening, and that's part of our conversation today. So more than 29 million Americans actually have diabetes, and that number is growing. Like we're seeing, a combination of metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and heart disease increasing. So the USDA recommends that we get no more than 10 teaspoons of sugar per day, but Americans are eating closer to 30 teaspoons of sugar per day. Again, it's not just the sugar that you're adding to your food, it's what's in your food. The thing about sugar is that it is very addictive. There have been studies that have shown that sugar activates the same places in the brain as other addictive substances such as cocaine and cigarettes. The reason or the definition of why sugar is addictive, other than the physiology behind it, is because eating even small amounts of sugar creates a bigger desire for more sugar. So if you ever find yourself starting to eat sugar and then wanting more, that's why. That's the nature why sugar is addictive. And then the second reason is when you cut out sugar, you can have withdrawal symptoms. So I've had clients who have taken a break from sugar, and what happens is sometimes at first they might get a headache, they might feel nauseous, really tired, and that's because their body's withdrawing from the sugar that they're used to getting on a daily basis. Now, I'm not suggesting that you cut out all sugar. I know that some nutritionists and some doctors recommend to cut out all sugar. And my goal is to get you to still be able to have sweet flavors in your diet, still enjoy the sweetness, but have healthy upgrades for those items that you love and that you crave. So that's what I'll be providing you with today. Thank you to everyone who has joined us, and if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. All right. So how do you know if sugar is affecting you on a daily basis? There are lots of different symptoms that can be related to sugar, and sugar can influence a lot of different health outcomes or symptoms that you're experiencing. So some of the very common symptoms that you may not know are linked to sugar or high intake of sugar are joint pain and stiffness, so lots of inflammation in the body with sugar, skin outbreaks, so either acne or eczema or psoriasis can be related to increased amounts of sugar. Also, candida, yeast infections can be related to increased sugar. Low energy. Also, sugar affects not only our physical, but it can affect our mental and emotional moods. So when we start our day with a pastry or when we have a donut or a cookie throughout the day, that might affect the way that we feel or might affect our emotions, and maybe we can't show up as our happy selves when our blood sugar is going up and down throughout the day. Also, there's a lot of studies that have linked sugar to ADD and ADHD in children, as well as that applies for adults too. Most of those studies have been done on children. PMS symptoms and hormone imbalances can be related to too much sugar in the diet, as well as osteoporosis, lots of acidity in the body with sugar contributing to osteoporosis. You might feel if your blood sugar is unstable or if sugar is affecting you, you might feel jittery or shaky when you skip meals, so that's something to look out for. You might notice that it's difficult to lose weight or that you are gaining weight. And if you are experiencing sugar cravings in the sense that you feel like you have to have sugar right after meals, or you have intense sugar cravings throughout the day, these are symptoms that sugar is affecting you at this time. So let's move forward. So I'd like to ask you, what is a craving? What is a craving, and what does that even mean? If you can describe what is a craving, or even type in what types of foods or sugar you normally crave, please enter in the chat box. This is the participation part, so please go ahead and type in, what do you think a craving is? And if you don't know the answer to that, then maybe what are some types of sugar that you crave? And everything is anonymous, so okay. So we have sugar is a desire to eat something even when you know it's not good for you. Okay, someone else craves chocolate. Yeah, chocolate's a very common one that people crave. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Okay, so let's see. Sweet candies, okay, so candy and chocolate, those are some common sugar cravings that some of you are experiencing. Very good, okay. So a craving is a powerful desire for something. What I want to express to you is that cravings are not always a bad thing. Cravings that it's important for us to actually listen to our cravings. So if we're having cravings, which is a signal from the body, that something's imbalanced, then it's a good opportunity to check in and see where are we out of balance. So sugar cravings can be caused by nutrient deficiencies. They can be caused by other imbalances in the body with our nutrition. They can be caused by imbalanced blood sugar, low energy, or lack of sleep. That's a big one. So there's studies that show that when we don't get enough sleep, when we're tired, that our hunger and fullness cues, our hunger and fullness hormones, leptin and ghrelin, they don't respond the same way. So we're more often going to have cravings or feel hungrier and overeat when we're tired, to have a little bit less self-control and willpower when we're tired. So that's an area to look at too. And then we can also have emotional cravings. So when we're feeling sad or we're feeling lonely or bored, those are some of the types of emotional cravings that can come up for us when it comes to sugar and sweets. So I'd like to ask you, some of you have mentioned a few of them already, but what are some common foods that we already know have sugar in them? So these aren't the hidden sugars, but these are the ones that we already know that have sugar in them. You type in the chat box, what are some common sugar items? Okay, candy, fruit, so that's more of a natural sugar, so I would consider that a healthier sugar. Sodas, yeah, definitely sodas. One of the top things that come to mind for me is sugary beverages like sugary coffees, frappuccinos, a lot of the syrups that are added to our coffee. Juices, okay, yeah. So you guys are already know that it's not just in candies and in chocolate and in sweets, but it's also in some other items like fruit and juices as well, yeah. So the items common foods that we know that have sugar in them are chocolate, cookies, cakes, cupcakes, donuts, ice cream, candy, desserts, sodas. These are things that we know have sugar in them and that are okay to indulge in every once in a while. Now, the reason why I bring these up is because I want you to see that, these are the places that we know have sugar, but there are other places that sugar is hiding that we may not be aware of yet. So it's okay if we're having these foods every once in a while if the rest of our day looks healthier and we don't have all of the added sugar from our daily routine. So we're going to go over some specific examples of different foods that have higher amounts of sugar in them too. Other places that have common sugar in them, you might not think of these as sugar, but processed carbohydrates, anything that's made with white flour, as well as wheat flour even, they break down into sugar in the bloodstream. So they have a very similar effect on your blood sugar levels as regular sugar. So things like breads, crackers, pasta, pizza, white rice, all the good stuff, right? So these are the processed carbohydrates, and very similarly as with desserts, the more that we have of these, the more that we crave them, and they can be very addicting in nature as well. So let's talk about some health foods that have sugar in them. If you can type in the chat box, what are some healthy foods that have sugar in them? Maybe some healthy snacks that might be recommended, or some beverages that are healthy. Granola bars, smoothies, juices, excellent. Fruit, yogurt, milk, yeah, excellent. Okay, you guys are doing great. Thank you for your participation. So, yes, a lot of those are on here. So some common places where we find sugar in our diet, this is where sugar is hiding. Fruit juices like orange juice, apple juice, and pineapple juice. Now, the reason why these have so much sugar in them is because when you have a glass of orange juice, even when it's fresh pressed, it's a combination of about 4 or 5 different oranges into one glass. And we would never sit down and eat 4 or 5 oranges in one sitting. And the other reason is because fruit juice doesn't have any fiber in it. So we don't have anything to help slow down the sugar from getting into our bloodstream. There was one more thing with fruit juice. Oh, also, most fruit juice is pasteurized, and that actually makes the juice more sweet, and it adds the amount of sugar content in it. So a fresh juice is going to be better than a pasteurized juice, but all fruit juices actually have a lot of sugar in them, and we get these cravings, or we start to have these habits from when we're younger, from when we're kids, and it used to be that, just avoiding soda was okay, but now with childhood issues with prediabetes and diabetes, as well as weight gain in children, we really have to start looking at other things like juices as well. Other places like flavored yogurts, we'll take a look at some yogurts, some labels, nutrition labels today on yogurt, see how high that actually gets. Sauces, things like barbecue sauce, ketchup, tomato sauce. If you look on the back, it usually says the serving size is 1 or 2 tablespoons, and most people have a lot more than that when they're having these types of sauces. Other places that it hides, salad dressings, in peanut butter. A lot of peanut butters add sugar. You can get a natural peanut butter that has no sugar in it, that the ingredients are just peanuts, and that's a great way to kind of upgrade your peanut butter. Protein bars, a lot of them have way too much sugar. They have just as much sugar as candy bars in them, and it seems like they're healthy, but sugar is definitely hiding in those as well. Granolas and cereals, the types of sugar that are used and the amount of sugar, unless you're making your granola at home, then you can kind of control how much sweetness you're putting in. Alcohol, a lot of times what you're mixing with the alcohol, so mixed drinks with sodas or juices, that can tend to add up really quickly. Coffee creamer is one of the biggest places that I see people see that my clients are overdoing it with the sugar. So not just the creamer that you're adding, there's a lot of sweetness that's going in there as well, and a lot of artificial ingredients. So I would rather someone use organic full-fat milk or an organic half and half than doing a artificial coffee creamer. Flavored syrups that are added, so a vanilla latte or a chai latte at most places are made with flavored syrup, so that's what I'm referring to. A lot of baby foods actually have a lot of sugar in them, so really looking at those too. And then high glycemic fruits, which we'll get into shortly. Those are primarily things like bananas and mangoes and pineapple, which you definitely don't have to cut those out of your diet, but it's just good to be aware of what are the fruits that have higher amounts of sugar, and then that way you can see how much to incorporate into your diet. Okay. So now that we know where sugar is hiding, I also want to look at what are some alternatives, what are some natural sweeteners that you can use instead of sugar? What are some of the sugar replacements that you're using right now? You can type in the chat box. Raw honey, excellent. Yeah, raw honey has some great nutrients in it. It has some really great antibacterial properties in there, lots of nutrients, great. Stevia is also, we'll talk a little bit about the different types of stevia. All right, excellent. So guava, maybe using fruit to sweeten things, excellent, okay. So some healthy sugar substitutes, these two top ones, you may or may not be familiar with. They are becoming more popular, more common, easier to find. So coconut palm sugar and coconut palm nectar, they come from the coconut tree, and they are natural sweeteners that do not have a high spike on the glycemic index. Coconut palm sugar tastes very similar. It's kind of like a mix between maple syrup and brown sugar. It's got a really nice flavor, and it's a great substitute for sweeteners that you're adding to your coffee. So try that with your coffee. If you're currently putting a regular sweetener or an artificial sweetener in your coffee, you can do that. Switch it out and see how you do. And coconut palm nectar is more of a liquid syrup type sweetener. Raw honey is also excellent. It is higher in sugar, even though it's a natural sweetener. So depending on what your blood sugar levels are, everyone's a little bit different. And if you're in that pre-diabetic or diabetic range, then you may want to stick to the coconut palm sugar and the stevia. Otherwise, raw honey is great, or grade B maple syrup. So even though these are natural sweeteners, you want to look at the serving size, 1 to 2 tablespoons, or depending on the product, you want to just look on the back and see what the serving size is as well. And stevia, so not all stevia is clean, not all stevia is pure stevia. What happened was that stevia became the new popular item in the food industry because a lot of people were substituting it for sugar. And then some of the big companies like Coca-Cola started buying out these stevia products. So if you see Truvia, which is one of the most common stevia products, if you look on the back, it's not just stevia, there's other ingredients in there. So you really want to look for a clean stevia product, and that is a great low glycemic product. It doesn't spike the blood sugar at all. I personally like the liquid stevia better than the powder. There's a vanilla liquid stevia that I like that's flavored just with vanilla extract, and that can be really nice. And the thing with stevia is that if you add too much stevia, it gets bitter. So you want to really start small and slow with stevia and then add more as needed. Other healthy sugar substitutes are having fruit, adding in fruits like some of you have mentioned, and then maybe looking at other sweet things that have lower amounts of sugar in them. So dark chocolate usually has a lot lower sugar in it than milk chocolate, but you do always have to check the label, and we're going to teach you how to do that really shortly. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions so far about any of the sugar substitutes or where sugar is hiding? You're welcome to type your questions in the chat box if you do, and if you don't, that's okay too. All right, excellent. Maybe that means everyone's following along and learning some new things. Great. Okay. So before I mentioned that processed carbohydrates like breads and pastas, crackers, cookies, those all break down into sugar in the body. So I wanted to also give you some healthy alternatives for those. So if you've never tried zucchini noodles, it's not something that you're going to go buy in a box. It's actually you use a regular zucchini, and you can get a small handheld spiralizer. You don't have to get the big machine and break it out and use it. It's a lot of cleaning. So instead, you can get a small handheld spiralizer, and you can get that from Bed Bath & Beyond or on Amazon, and that can be a really nice substitute for pasta. You could also do brown rice pasta, which I have listed at the bottom. It still is a processed carbohydrate, but it does have less sugar in it than white flour and than white pasta or regular pasta. Other options, other noodles, sweet potato noodles, also cauliflower crust or cauliflower rice. Someone just mentioned in the chat box that I forgot to put cauliflower rice on here. So cauliflower rice is basically a rice substitute where you grate up cauliflower in a food processor, or now you can often find this already done at the store. So you can find it either in the frozen or the fresh section. I know that Trader Joe's has it, and some other stores as well for those of you who don't have access to Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's also just started offering cauliflower crust pizza. So they've offered the pizza crust already made for you, which is really great. So the other thing that I want to mention is that if you struggle with sugar cravings, it is helpful to add in some sweet vegetables into your diet. Humans have craved sugar, or not craved sugar, but needed sugar for a very long time now, even before processed sugar was around. We enjoy that sweet flavor. And if you think about it, when a baby is born, the first flavor that they're ever exposed to is breast milk, and breast milk is sweet. And so we're taught when we're young that when we're crying, we get sweet to comfort us, and when when we have our mother's warmth, that we get this sweet flavor. And so it's very much associated in our minds with comfort, and that's also why we do need to incorporate sweet flavors into our diets. But it's just the types of sweets that we've started to incorporate have kind of gone too much and are more processed. So some sweet vegetables that you can add in, things like sweet potatoes, yams. Some people get those confused. One of them's orange and one of them's white. For this purpose, it doesn't matter which is which. But sweet potatoes or yams, beets, carrots, those are all some great options. And when you roast these vegetables, they give off a really nice caramelized flavor, roasted flavor that can be sweeter. A great granola substitute is Purely Elizabeth granola. That's a brand, and she uses coconut palm sugar for her granola. So really nice lower sugar granola product, and a really nice low glycemic sugar like we talked about before. Other options are almond flour or coconut flour desserts. So there's many options online. If you search for paleo desserts, that's going to pop up, or gluten-free desserts, that's going to pop up some recipes for almond flour or coconut flour desserts. Things like cupcakes and cookies, those can be made with healthier substitutes as well. So I definitely want you to still enjoy the sweets and just find some healthy upgrades. So our next Q&A is, when you're reading the food label, how many grams of sugar should you be looking for per serving? Does anyone know how much sugar, how many grams we should be looking for? If you don't know, you can just place a guess. That's okay too. Guessing is good. All right, I see 10 grams of sugar. Okay, I see less than 5 to 10 grams of sugar, less than 20 grams of sugar. Okay, excellent. So for every 1 teaspoon of sugar, when you're looking at the label, for every 4 grams of sugar, that's equal to 1 teaspoon of sugar. So keep that in mind as we move along, so you'll see how it adds up really quickly, how we get to that 100 pounds to 130 pounds of sugar per year. The answer is less than 5 grams of sugar per serving. So I'd like to show you how to look for that. I'm going to try and draw on the screen here. Let's see if I can do that. Give me a moment. Try and figure this out. Okay, so here is where we're looking at grams of sugar. And we want to look at the serving size too. So the serving size is up here, is half a cup. So what that means is if you're pouring yourself a bowl of cereal, but you're pouring a cup of cereal into your bowl in the morning, then you need to double the amount of sugar. So double the sugar at the bottom here. Oh, that took it away. Okay, so 26 grams of sugar on this particular label. And remember how I said for every 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. So if you look at that, there's 6.5 teaspoons in this particular food item. Okay. All right, so let's move on. There are also some hidden names for different sugars. So, you know, sometimes it doesn't say sugar on the back of the label. The first thing that I want you to do when you pick up a food item or a box or a bag is looking at I don't want you to look at the calories first, I actually want you to look at the ingredient list first. So if it doesn't have healthy ingredients, then the amount of calories is not going to matter as much, because the message that the ingredients are sending to your cells and your body are not going to be the same if it's more processed. So I want you to look at these different names for sugar, places that sugar could be hiding too. So cane sugar, cane juice might sound healthy, but it's definitely a derivative of sugar. Brown rice syrup, also pretty high on the glycemic index. High fructose corn syrup, that's in a lot of ketchup. So if you're not buying organic ketchup, then you're most likely eating ketchup that has high fructose corn syrup in it, which has been shown to be even more addicting than white sugar. So definitely take a look at that. It's in a lot of sodas as well, which is what makes soda so addicting. Sucrose and aspartame. So I do want to take a moment to address artificial sweeteners. A lot of times when a product says sugar-free, it means that it has artificial sweeteners in it. And artificial sweeteners have been shown by many studies to be a carcinogen. So they are a cancer-causing agent. And we really want to be careful with these artificial sweeteners. The other study that came out last year about artificial sweeteners is that it tricks your body to think that you're getting sugar because you're getting the sweet flavor, and it actually makes you crave more sugar. It's shown to actually increase your appetite. So these artificial sweeteners have never been proven safe. There's never been studies that have shown that they're safe for human consumption. The name itself says artificial sweetener. It's a fake sweetener that is created in a lab. It's a chemical sweetener, and there's nothing natural about it. So if these are in your office, or if these are, you know, by the coffee maker at work, or if they're at home, I highly recommend for you to start bringing a substitute and start weaning yourself off of these types of sweeteners. So even though they have 0 calories, like you can see on the picture, and they also have 0 sugar in them, it doesn't mean that they're healthy for you. You really want to look out and make sure that you know what the ingredients are. So let's go through, I wanted to go through some very common healthy items, and I'm going to draw on all of these so that we can see what we're looking at. This is a Cliff Bar, so a pretty common protein bar that most people will pick up at the store. And as you can see here, there's, if I can get the pointer to work. Okay, as you can see here, there's 22 grams of sugar on this label. So again, that would mean that there are about 5.5 teaspoons of sugar in this one bar. The other thing I want you to notice is that the first ingredient is a sweetener. So organic brown rice syrup, again, that might sound healthy, but when the first ingredient is a sweetener, it means that there's a lot of sugar, there's a lot of it in the product. So the way that the ingredient list on any food product is shown is from the most amount to the least amount. So this one has the most amount of organic brown rice syrup. That's the largest amount of the largest ingredient in this product, and the smallest ingredient in this product is vitamin E. So you can see here that you know, if sugar or a sweetener is in the first part of the ingredient list, that's something to look out for and that we want to avoid. And again, remember, we're looking for products that have less than 5 grams of sugar per serving. So this one has 22. It's way off of what the recommended amount is. Vitamin water, this brings us to beverages. Even some healthy beverages like green juices and smoothies often have a lot of sugars in them. It's really important to check the label and not just assume that it has the right ingredients in them. So a lot of times another beverage that I wanted to point out is Odwalla smoothies. They're pre-made smoothies. They have a ton of fruit in them, which is great for the vitamins and minerals, but they also have a lot of sugar in them. So this particular vitamin water has 31 grams of sugar, and being that it's in liquid form, this goes straight into the bloodstream. There's no fiber, there's no protein, there's no fats, nothing to help absorb this. So it's a very straight shot of sugar to the bloodstream, which is going to mean a blood sugar spike and then a blood sugar drop. And don't worry, I'm going to be giving you some tips to avoid your sugar cravings shortly. So we're just going through some examples, and I definitely want to give you something that you can do about this, not just looking at how much sugar there is on these items, but really knowing that there are alternatives and things that we can start to help to change your sugar habits. Flavored yogurt. So flavored yogurts that this one has 26 grams of sugar. Yogurt usually naturally has some sugar in it, so it's one exception that I would say that you can start to look at. If yogurt has a little bit more than 5 grams of sugar per serving, that's fine. I wouldn't go more than 10 grams of sugar per serving when you're looking at a yogurt. So this one has 26, which is way too high. Most of the flavored yogurts are going to be higher in sugar, and that's because what happens is they use the fruit, but it's more of a jelly or a jam. They don't use fresh fruit, and if they do use the fresh fruit, they ferment it or wait until it's more of a jelly or a jam, which increases the amount of sugar that's in it. That's why flavored yogurts have a lot of sugar in them. So before we go to our next slide, if I can go back, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is that we're having a really large amount of sugar in our diets, and it's coming from these everyday foods that we're eating. You know, people are not getting diabetes just from the sweets that they're eating, the desserts. They're getting it because we're getting such a big influx of sugar in our diet on a daily basis. So really important to note that it's not just the desserts, but it's coming from a lot of other places, and as you can see, it adds up really quickly. Okay, so tips to avoid sugar temptations. So we really want to set you up for success. It's not just about avoiding sugars or buying products that are lower in sugar. We really want you to know that and that you're empowered to make healthier choices. So the first tip for avoiding sugar temptations is to incorporate more protein and healthy fats into your diet. So protein and healthy fats help to stabilize your blood sugar levels. They help to keep them more even throughout the day. If your blood sugar is spiking and dropping throughout the day because of the foods that you're eating, every time that you have a blood sugar drop, it's going to make you crave sugars and you're going to have lower energy. So really looking at that, making sure that you incorporate protein with every meal is going to stabilize your blood sugar more. I've had people tell me once they start adding protein in with their breakfast, they no longer have sugar cravings in the evening. They notice a big difference with that. The next tip that I have is to avoid skipping meals. Again, if you skip meals or wait too long to eat, what's going to happen again? Your blood sugar is going to drop, and that's going to cause sugar cravings. So really setting yourself up for success. Making sure that you don't wait too long. At that point, we get to the hangry feeling, hungry and angry, or hungry and anxious, because our blood sugar is low, and our body is really intelligent. It's going to make us crave things that bring our blood sugar up very quickly, which are those processed carbohydrates. So set yourself up for success. It's not always about willpower. It's also about your physiology. Next, like I mentioned, adding protein to your breakfast, so either adding eggs or adding a protein smoothie with your breakfast. You can even have leftovers for breakfast. It doesn't always have to be breakfast foods, especially if you have kind of a funky schedule or if you work night shift. You know, breakfast doesn't always have to be breakfast foods. So making sure that you are having breakfast and that it does have some protein in it as well. Another tip is to stay hydrated with water throughout the day. So remember how I said that sugar cravings are often a signal that we're out of balance, or something's out of balance, that we have a nutrient deficiency or something else is going out of balance in our body. When we're dehydrated, the body sends us signals for cravings. It doesn't always tell us that we need water, but it does send us cravings, and that's often going to be sugar. So staying hydrated throughout the day is a tip I definitely recommend. And also, when you have sugar cravings, have a glass of water first and take a few breaths and see if you still crave the sugar 5 minutes later. A craving is usually a very quick hit that lasts less than 2 minutes. If you're actually hungry, then your hunger will start to increase as it goes along. But cravings are very quick. So if you can distract yourself a little bit by having maybe a peppermint tea or having water or going for a little walk around, taking some breaths, that can often delay the craving, and you may not even have that craving anymore. Another thing that I really want to emphasize is to reduce the guilt trip around sweets. So many people will eat a dessert or eat a cookie or a piece of cake and then afterwards say, oh man, like I really shouldn't have eaten that. Why did I eat that? I didn't want to eat it, but I did eat it. And just saying really negative things, negative self-talk around eating sweets, feeling really guilty afterwards for eating the sweets because they're not healthy. Well, the problem with this guilt trip is that it actually makes us want the sweets more. What happens is if we were to eat the sweet and really actually enjoy and slow down and enjoy the flavor of something sweet or a dessert, and then really give ourselves some compassion and say it's okay to have this sweet every once in a while, you're less likely to go back for more. And that's because as humans, we often, if we're told that we can't have something or shouldn't have something, it makes us want it more. That is just how our psychology works. It's not unique to you. It's everybody that if we're told that we can't have something, it oftentimes makes us want it more. So every time we have a guilt trip, we're reinforcing, oh, I shouldn't have had that. I shouldn't eat that. Why did I eat that? That reinforces us to have sweets again. Instead, enjoy the sweet. Eat it slowly. A lot of times we eat sugar really quickly because we're embarrassed or because we feel guilty, so we eat it really quickly. Slow down, enjoy the sweet, and tell yourself that it's okay to have a sweet every once in a while. Not a big deal. Having that compassion for yourself will help to prevent those reoccurring emotional cravings that come up for you. I also recommend to have some healthy alternatives for sugar at work or at home. So, a lot of times in the workplace, I know especially at hospitals that many patients might bring in something to thank you, or some of your coworkers might bring in some sweets in the office, and they are harder to avoid, and when they're there, you're more likely to have cravings. So have some healthy alternatives. Something that you can say to yourself is that if I can have this tomorrow, if I can have this later, do I still need it right now? That sometimes can delay the urgency of having it when you're eating sugar because it's just around. So tell yourself, if I can have it later, if I can have a sweet at home later, would I still want to eat it right now, or do I still need it right now? And having some healthy alternatives, so having an upgrade like some dark chocolate in your drawer, or making a home-baked good with healthy sugar, healthy sweeteners, and having that so that you know that you still get some sweets can be a helpful way to avoid those sweet cravings when you're at work, or sweet temptations. All right. Now, that sometimes doesn't help when you have people peer pressuring you or insisting, no, please just have one. Please just have one cookie. Please just have a cupcake. Are you sure you don't want the donut? There's a lot of pressure that happens. And so I wanted to give you some tools and some things to say that can help to get that pressure off. So these are some strategies that have worked really well for some of my clients. And something that you can say is, I'll have one later. If someone keeps persisting and saying, you know, do you want one? Are you sure you don't want one? Something that you can say is, I'll have one later. The next thing that you can say is, I just ate, I'm full right now. I don't want that right now. So something, instead of saying no thank you or I don't want that, you can just say, I just ate, I'm full right now. You can also express that sugar doesn't agree with you. For a lot of people, sugar doesn't make them feel good. It makes them break out or it makes their stomach hurt. So you could say that, you know, really just tell them what's going on, that sugar bothers you or sugar doesn't agree with you, and that you'll pass this time. Some other excuses, quote unquote, or some strategies, things that you can say are, you know, I'm going to a party tonight, so I'm going to save my sweets for later. You can say that to someone who's trying to get you to eat sugar or who's offering you something. You can also be really honest and say, I'm taking a break from sugar. The last thing is something that I highly recommend. If you're trying to change your food habits and you really want to make changes, I do recommend to talk to your friends and family and coworkers. Tell them what you're up to. Share your goals with them. They're more likely to be supportive if they know what you're doing and know what you're trying to change than if they, you know, don't know and they think that you're just trying to, you know, say no and they feel rejected because you're saying no. So you don't have to feel bad for saying no if you've already told everyone what you're working on. And surrounding yourself with supportive people is really important when you're trying to make nutrition changes. So those are some tips for saying no to sugar. So that concludes the presentation for today. If you have any questions, this is a great time to ask. If you are curious about substitutes or upgrades for some of the sugar or sweets that you like, some desserts that you like, please type that into the chat box and I'd be happy to answer. I do have someone who typed in a question earlier. If you typed in the question, I do not see a cardboard, any suggestions. I don't quite understand the question, so if you want to rephrase it, I'd be happy to answer it for you. Maybe it's a technical issue. Chat box, okay, thank you. So are you on your phone or are you on the computer? Looks like you're typing into the chat box well. That's the right place that you're typing into. Are you on your phone or your computer? Phone, okay. So you're going to look for the icon of a little person and you're going to click on that, and I believe that you can find the chat from there. Heather, do you want to pop on? Okay. Okay. All right. Looks like you found the chat box. Do you have any questions? All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you on future presentations. Thank you so much.
And just quickly before you sign off, thank you for everyone who attended. Thank you, Amy, for the great presentation. And if you haven't already, please make sure to sign up for the remainder of the sessions that work in your schedule. We have some really great things lined up, and there will be another reminder email going out if you need it tomorrow with a link to sign up. And if you found these helpful, please do tell the other travelers. If you're traveling with any other IA travelers about this, make sure to let them know how helpful you are finding it. And of course, we would love to have you a part of our community on Facebook. So if you go on Facebook and search IA Wellness Group, we would love to have you join there. And you just click to join the group and our admins will approve you. And that's just a great space for us all to connect offline and in real life. If you want to go for a hike, you've taken photos doing something healthy, we just want a great interactive place where we can all share how we're living healthy lives together. So thank you again for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed today's presentation, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.